I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Standing outside my own bedroom door, my hand frozen on the doorknob, I listened to my husband Brandon's voice drift through the crack. He was on the phone, speaking in that hushed tone he used when he didn't want to be overheard. Except this time, he thought I couldn't hear him at all. "Mum, I know this sounds terrible, but her being deaf might actually solve our problems," Brandon said, his words slicing through me like broken glass. "She can't hear anything anymore, and that gives us the perfect opportunity to—" My legs felt weak. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of nightmare. But I could hear him perfectly clearly, every single word cutting deeper than the last. Let me back up. 5 weeks ago, I woke up to complete silence. I remember that morning so vividly. I opened my eyes and reached over to turn off my alarm clock, wondering why I hadn't heard it go off. Then I realized I couldn't hear anything at all. Not the clock, not the birds outside, not my own breathing. Nothing. Panic set in immediately. I shook Brandon awake, trying to tell him something was wrong, but I couldn't even hear my own voice. The look of confusion on his face turned to concern as he realized what was happening. He grabbed his phone and typed, "Can you hear me at all?" I shook my head, tears already streaming down my face. We rushed to the emergency room. After hours of tests, Dr. Monroe, the ear specialist, delivered the diagnosis. A severe ear infection I'd been fighting for weeks had caused sudden sensorineural hearing loss, complete deafness in both ears. "Will it come back?" Brandon had asked the doctor while I watched their lips move, trying to understand. Dr. Monroe had written his answer on a notepad for me. "It's possible, but there's no guarantee. We'll start treatment immediately and monitor closely. Some patients recover fully, others don't." Those first few days were the most terrifying of my life. I'm an elementary school teacher, and suddenly I couldn't hear my students, couldn't hear announcements, couldn't function in my job. I had to take immediate medical leave. My entire world became silent and small. But Brandon seemed like a rock. At least that's what I thought. He took time off work to help me adjust. He learned how to communicate with me through writing notes and text messages. He held me when I cried at night, feeling isolated and scared. He went with me to every doctor's appointment, every hearing test, every treatment session. His mother, Patricia, started visiting more often too. She'd bring meals, sit with me, write encouraging notes. "You're so strong, Amelia," she'd written once. "Brandon and I are here for you." I'd felt grateful, supported, loved. But there were moments that felt off. Moments I couldn't quite explain. Like when I'd walk into a room and Brandon and Patricia would suddenly stop their conversation. Their faces would shift, become carefully neutral. They'd smile at me, write something casual on the notepad, but something in their eyes seemed different. Or the way Brandon started spending more time on his phone, tilting the screen away from me. When I'd tap his shoulder to ask who he was texting, he'd wave it off as work stuff and change the subject. Patricia's visits became longer, more frequent. She'd stay for hours and I'd watch her and Brandon having these intense conversations I couldn't follow. Their expressions seemed serious, almost secretive. But whenever I'd ask what they were discussing, Brandon would write, "Just boring real estate talk," or "Mum's worried about her investments." Then there was the mail situation. Brandon started intercepting everything before I could see it. He said he was helping me by sorting through it, handling the bills, managing our accounts while I recovered. It seemed thoughtful at the time. I trusted him completely. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband. We'd been married for 6 years. He'd never given me a reason to doubt him before. The isolation of deafness was overwhelming. I couldn't talk on the phone with Nicole, my best friend, so we had to rely on text messages. I couldn't go out comfortably because I couldn't hear cars, announcements, or people trying to get my attention. I felt vulnerable in a way I'd never experienced before. Every week I went to Dr. Monroe for checkups. Every week the tests showed the same thing. No improvement. He kept adjusting my medications, trying different treatments, but nothing seemed to work. Until week 5. I sat in Dr. Monroe's office yesterday for what I thought would be another routine appointment. He did his usual examination, looking in my ears with his instruments, checking my responses. But this time his expression changed. His eyebrows went up. He looked excited. He gestured for me to put on the headphones for a hearing test. I'd done this test a dozen times before, and every time I heard nothing. Just silence. So I didn't expect anything different. But when he pressed the button, I heard it. A beep. Faint, but there. My eyes went wide. Dr. Monroe saw my reaction and his smile grew bigger. He pressed again. Another beep, this time in my other ear. Then another. And another. When the test finished, he pulled out his notepad, but before he could write, I whispered, "I can hear you." My own voice sounded strange after 5 weeks of silence, but I could hear it. Tears poured down my face. "Amelia, this is remarkable," Dr. Monroe said, and I could hear every word. "Your hearing has completely returned." He explained that while rare, it was possible with the aggressive treatment we'd been doing. The inflammation had finally gone down enough for my hearing to recover. It was almost miraculous. But then he said something that changed everything. Given the sensitive nature of sudden hearing recovery, I'd recommend not announcing it immediately, he told me, his expression serious. Some patients find it valuable to observe their environment first and adjust gradually. The transition from deaf to hearing can be jarring. Take a day or two to process this change before telling people. I nodded, but even then, something in my gut was stirring, a strange instinct I couldn't name. I drove home in my car, and for the first time in 5 weeks, I could hear the engine, the radio, the traffic around me. It should have been pure joy. But instead, I felt uneasy. When I got home, Brandon was there early, which was unusual. He smiled when he saw me, walked over and kissed my forehead. Then he wrote on our notepad, "How was the doctor? Any changes?" I could hear him breathing. I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen. I could hear everything. But I picked up the pen and wrote back, "No change, same as always." I don't know why I lied. Some instinct told me to wait, to watch, to listen. That night, after Brandon thought I'd gone to sleep, I heard him making phone calls in the bathroom, whispering about timing and the plan. And this morning, I heard him in our bedroom, talking to Patricia. That's how I ended up here, outside my own bedroom door, my hand shaking on the doorknob, listening to my husband plot something that involved my deafness being an opportunity. My heart pounded so loud I was afraid he'd hear it, but I stayed frozen, listening to every word as my entire world crumbled around me. I didn't open the bedroom door. Instead, I backed away slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. Brandon was still talking to Patricia, his voice low but clear now that I could hear again. "We need to move fast, Mom. The lawyer says we have a narrow window for this." "Lawyer? What lawyer?" My mind raced as I tiptoed down the hallway to the bathroom. I turned on the faucet to cover any sound I might make and tried to steady my breathing. This couldn't be happening. Brandon wouldn't. He couldn't. But he was. Whatever this was, he was planning something. And my deafness was somehow central to it. I heard his footsteps coming down the hall. Quickly, I flushed the toilet and opened the bathroom door, arranging my face into what I hoped looked normal. Brandon stood there, phone in his pocket, smiling at me like nothing was wrong. He grabbed the notepad we kept in every room now and wrote, "Morning. Sleep well?" I nodded and took the pen. "Fine. Going to make coffee." In the kitchen, I moved through the familiar routine of making breakfast, but every sound seemed amplified. The coffee maker gurgling, the refrigerator humming, Brandon's footsteps as he moved around upstairs. I could hear all of it, and I had to pretend I couldn't. Brandon came down dressed for work. He kissed my cheek and wrote, "Big meeting today. Might be home late. Love you." I wrote back, "Love you too." The words felt like lies on the paper. I watched him leave, heard his car start in the driveway. Then I heard him on the phone again before he drove away. "Yeah, Mom, I'm heading out now. I'll stop by at lunch and we'll go over everything." The sound of his car faded down the street. I stood frozen in my kitchen, coffee cup trembling in my hands. What was I supposed to do? Call the police and say what? My husband had a conversation with his mother that sounded suspicious. I had no proof of anything, just a terrible feeling in my gut, and half a conversation I'd overheard. I needed to know more. I needed to understand what Brandon was planning. His home office was just down the hall. Brandon had always been private about his workspace, but he'd never locked it before. I tried the door. It opened easily. The office was neat, organized, typical Brandon. His desk had the usual stuff: computer, papers, pens, a photo of us from our wedding day. I stared at that photo for a moment. We looked so happy, so in love. Had that all been fake? I started searching through drawers, feeling guilty but desperate. Bank statements, utility bills, tax documents, nothing unusual. Then I reached the filing cabinet in the corner. The bottom drawer had a folder pushed all the way to the back. No label on it, just a plain manila folder. I pulled it out and opened it. My blood went cold. Legal documents, pages and pages of them. I saw words like power of attorney, medical decision-making authority, competency evaluation, guardianship. My name was on every page. I flipped through them with shaking hands. There were notes in Brandon's handwriting in the margins. Timeline: 6 to 8 weeks of documented disability. Patricia confirms investment opportunity closing mid-December. Need legal authority established before then. Investment opportunity. Legal authority over me. I kept reading. Bank statements from our joint account showed transfers I'd never seen before. Brandon had been moving money out, thousands of dollars at a time, into an account I didn't recognize. Over 3 weeks, he'd transferred $85,000. $85,000. Gone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the papers. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of everything. Every document, every bank statement, every note in Brandon's handwriting. Then I found the email printouts. Messages between Brandon and someone named Patterson at a law firm. The emails talked about the situation with my incapacitated wife and establishing legal guardianship due to her inability to manage her affairs. Patterson had written, "Given her condition, the court should approve your request for financial authority without issue." I felt sick. Actually sick. I ran to the bathroom and dry heaved over the toilet. Brandon was trying to get legal control over me, over my money, over my life, because I was deaf, because he thought I was helpless. My phone buzzed. A text from Nicole. "Hey, how are you feeling today? Want me to come over?" I stared at the message. I wanted to call her to tell her everything, but I couldn't risk it. Not yet. I needed more information. I needed to know exactly what Brandon was planning. I went back to the office and kept searching. That's when I found the bank statements for our savings account, the one that held the inheritance from my parents. My parents had died in a car accident 3 years ago. It had been devastating. They left me $200,000. Brandon and I had agreed to save it, to use it for our future, maybe for a down payment on a bigger house or for kids someday. The account balance should have been around $215,000 with interest. Instead, it showed only $130,000. He'd already taken $85,000 from my parents' money. Rage flooded through me, hot and sharp. How dare he? How dare he? I heard a car in the driveway. My heart stopped. I glanced at the clock. It was only 11 in the morning. Brandon wasn't supposed to be home. I quickly shoved the folder back into the filing cabinet, making sure it was positioned exactly how I'd found it. I closed the drawer and rushed out of the office, pulling the door shut behind me. I made it to the living room just as the front door opened. I grabbed a book from the coffee table and sat down, forcing my face to stay calm even though my heart was racing. Brandon walked in, but he wasn't alone. Patricia was with him. "Is she here?" Patricia's voice carried clearly to where I sat. "Good. Brandon, are you absolutely sure you want to go through with this? Once we submit these papers, there's no turning back." I kept my eyes on my book, not moving, barely breathing. I could hear everything. And what I heard next made me realize that my husband wasn't just betraying me. He was stealing from me, and he'd been planning it since the day I went deaf. I turned a page in my book, though I couldn't have told you what was on it. Every muscle in my body was tense, ready to snap. Brandon and Patricia were in the entryway, close enough that I could hear every word. "Mum, we've been over this 100 times," Brandon said, his voice low and irritated. "The Riverside property deal is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Gerald has 3 other investors lined up, but he's saving a spot for me because we went to college together. But I need $200,000 to buy in, and that money is sitting in our savings account." "Money from her parents," Patricia said. I heard the hesitation in her voice, but it wasn't concern for me. It was fear of getting caught. "Money that belongs to both of us legally," Brandon shot back. "We're married. What's hers is mine." I wanted to scream. That money was all I had left of my parents. They'd worked their whole lives to save it. They'd wanted me to have security, to have something that was mine. And Brandon was talking about it like it was just another business opportunity. "But the paperwork," Patricia continued. "You're asking for power of attorney over her medical and financial decisions. You're claiming she's incompetent." "She's deaf, Mom. Temporarily incompetent. There's a difference." The casual cruelty in his voice made my stomach turn. "And what happens when her hearing comes back?" Patricia asked. Dr. Monroe said it was possible. There was a pause, a long one. I held my breath. "He said it could take months," Brandon finally replied, "or it might never come back at all. But even if it does, by then the deal will be closed. The investment will mature in 6 months, and we'll triple the money. I'll put back the 200,000 plus another 100,000 profit. Amelia will think I'm a financial genius for growing our savings while she was recovering. And if she finds out before then?" Another pause, longer this time. "She won't," Brandon said, and his voice had gone cold. "She can't hear anything, Mom. She's completely dependent on me right now. I control everything she sees, her mail, her bank statements, her email. I've been intercepting everything for weeks. She has no idea what's going on." I felt tears sliding down my cheeks, but I didn't dare wipe them away. I kept my eyes locked on the book, my face turned slightly away from them. They moved into the kitchen. I heard the refrigerator open, cabinets closing. Patricia was apparently making tea. They kept talking, their voices carrying through the open doorway. "What about her friend? Nicole?" Patricia asked. "What about her?" "Nicole texts Amelia. Amelia texts back. Nicole has no access to our finances. She doesn't know anything. She visits a lot. So, she's being a good friend to a deaf woman, that's all." I heard mugs being set on the counter, the electric kettle starting to boil. "Patterson has the papers ready?" Patricia asked. "Yes. We have an appointment at 2 o'clock today to finalize everything. He'll file them with the court tomorrow. Given Amelia's documented medical condition and the fact that I'm her husband, the judge will approve it within a week. Then I'll have full legal authority to access all our accounts, including the inheritance. And the competency evaluation? Already arranged. Dr. Monroe provided documentation of her hearing loss and the impact on her daily functioning. Patterson says it's more than enough to justify temporary guardianship." Temporary guardianship? Over me? Like I was a child? The kettle clicked off. I heard water being poured. "You know," Patricia said slowly, "if you'd just asked her for the money, she probably would have agreed to invest it. Maybe. Maybe not. But this way I don't have to ask. I don't have to explain the risk. I don't have to deal with her worrying about losing her parents' money. This way it just happens and then it's done." So he knew. He knew that taking this money without my knowledge was wrong. He just didn't care. There was a knock at the door. "Who the hell is that?" Brandon muttered. I heard him walk to the front window. "It's Nicole. Perfect timing." I heard him open the door, his voice suddenly bright and cheerful. "Nicole, hey, this is a surprise." "Hi, Brandon." Nicole's voice was warm, friendly. I brought lunch for Amelia. Thought I'd surprise her. That's really sweet, but this isn't the best time. Amelia's not feeling great today and my mum's here helping out. Oh, hi, Patricia, Nicole called out. I'll just pop in for a quick visit. I haven't seen Amelia in a few days and I want to check on her. I could hear the steel under Nicole's friendly tone. She wasn't going to be turned away easily. Good old Nicole. Sure. Okay, Brandon said, his voice tight. But just a quick visit. She really needs to rest. Nicole came into the living room and I could feel her sharp nurse's eyes taking everything in. My pale face, my shaking hands, the tears on my cheeks that I'd finally wiped away. She grabbed the notepad from the coffee table and wrote, "Are you okay? You look upset." This was it, the moment I had to make a choice, keep pretending or trust my best friend. I looked at Nicole, really looked at her. Her concerned face, her worried eyes, the notepad ready for me to write my response. She'd been my best friend since we were kids. She'd held me when my parents died. She'd been there for every important moment of my life. I made my decision. I set down my book carefully. Then I looked directly into Nicole's eyes and mouthed, not wrote, but mouthed, 3 words. I can hear. Nicole's eyes went wide, but she barely reacted otherwise. Years of nursing training kicked in. She kept her face mostly neutral and wrote on the notepad, "You're warm. Let me check your temperature." Brandon was in the doorway watching. Patricia stood behind him. Nicole pulled out her phone and pretended to show me something funny, tilting the screen away from Brandon. She typed quickly, "What's happening? Should I call police?" I took the phone and typed back, my hands trembling. "Brandon trying to steal my inheritance. Has lawyer appointment at 2 p.m. today for power of attorney. Forged documents. Need evidence." Nicole's jaw tightened, but her expression stayed casual. She wrote on the notepad in big letters so Brandon could see. "She needs rest. I'll check on her tomorrow." Then she stood up and turned to Brandon with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Take good care of her, Brandon. She's so lucky to have such a devoted husband." The word devoted dripped with acid that only I could detect. The door closed behind Nicole. I heard her car start, but the engine sound didn't fade away. She'd parked down the street. Smart. She was waiting. Brandon and Patricia came back into the living room. I kept my eyes on my book, though my hands were gripping it so hard my knuckles had turned white. "That was awkward," Brandon muttered. "I don't need Nicole hanging around today of all days." "She's gone now," Patricia said. "We should leave soon. The appointment is at 2, and I want to review the papers one more time before we meet with Patterson." "Fine, let me just grab my briefcase from the office." I heard Brandon's footsteps heading down the hall. This was my chance. I had maybe 30 seconds while he was in the office and Patricia was in the kitchen rinsing out the tea mugs. I pulled out my phone and texted Nicole. "They're leaving for lawyer at 1:30. Stay close." 3 dots appeared immediately. "On it. I'm calling my friend who's a lawyer. Don't do anything until they leave." Brandon came back, briefcase in hand. He walked over to me and kissed the top of my head. I forced myself not to flinch away from him. He wrote on the notepad, "Mom and I have errands. Back around 4. Call if you need anything." I nodded and gave him a small smile. It felt like my face might crack. They left. I waited until I heard both car doors slam, heard the engine start, heard them drive away. Then I counted to 60 just to be sure. The moment I hit 60, I was on my phone calling Nicole. "Oh my God, Amelia, your voice," Nicole breathed. "I can't believe you can hear again. When did this happen?" "Yesterday. Dr. Monroe cleared me." "Nicole, Brandon's been planning this for weeks. He's trying to get legal control over me and my money. There are documents in his office, bank statements showing he's already stolen $85,000 from my inheritance." "That son of a..." Nicole's voice was shaking with rage. "Okay, listen, I'm with my friend Karen right now. She's a lawyer. We're on speaker. Tell her everything." For the next 10 minutes, I poured out the whole story while Nicole drove back to my house. The documents I'd found, the conversation I'd overheard, the 2 o'clock appointment with Patterson. "This is fraud," Karen said, her voice sharp and professional. "Forgery, attempted theft, financial exploitation of a disabled person. Amelia, you need to act right now before he signs anything at that appointment. Once those papers are filed, it gets more complicated. What do I do? Get every piece of evidence you can. Photograph everything. Then you need to get to Patterson's office before your husband does and stop this." Nicole burst through my front door. "I'm here, let's move." We raced to Brandon's office. I showed Nicole where the folder was hidden. Together we pulled out every document and photographed them with both our phones. The forged signatures, the bank statements, the emails with Patterson. "Look at this," Nicole said, holding up a page I hadn't seen before. It was notes in Brandon's handwriting. "Meeting with Gerald Rue Riverside property. Needs 200K by Deshield 15. Amelia's inheritance. Needing perfect timing. Deafness. Day opportunity for legal access." Opportunity. He'd written it down. My disability was an opportunity to steal from me. Nicole found more emails buried in a stack. Messages between Brandon and Patricia discussing the plan. Patricia had written, "Are you sure this is ethical?" Brandon's response, "It's our money legally. I'm just taking what's already mine." "He actually believes this," I said, my voice hollow. "He actually thinks he has a right to my parents' money." "He's delusional, and he's a criminal." Karen's voice came through Nicole's phone. "How much time do we have?" I checked the clock. 45 minutes until his appointment. "Then we move now. Get to Patterson's office immediately. Call them from the parking lot. Make it clear that any papers involving your name are fraudulent and that you're competent and on your way." Nicole grabbed my arm. "Can you do this? Can you face him?" I thought about my parents. About the life they'd built, the money they'd saved, the inheritance they'd left me because they loved me. I thought about Brandon's voice saying my deafness might actually solve our problems. "Yes," I said. "I can do this." We got in Nicole's car and she drove fast, weaving through traffic. My hands were shaking as I dialed Patterson and Associates from the parking lot. "Patterson and Associates, how may I help you?" "This is Amelia Wright. I need to speak with Mr. Patterson immediately regarding my husband, Brandon Wright's 2 o'clock appointment today." There was a pause. "Mrs. Wright? I'm sorry, but Mr. Wright indicated you were unable to use the phone due to your medical condition." "I can hear perfectly fine," I said, my voice steady and cold. "My hearing returned yesterday. Please tell Mr. R. Patterson that if he values his law license, he will not proceed with any appointment involving my name until I am present in his office. I'll be there in 2 minutes. Another pause. "Please hold." 30 seconds later, a man's voice came on the line. "Mrs. Wright, this is James Patterson. I'm very confused. Your husband scheduled an appointment to discuss power of attorney arrangements due to your hearing loss and related complications. Mr. Patterson, I have fully recovered my hearing. I am completely competent. I have never authorized any power of attorney, and I have evidence that my husband has forged documents and been stealing from our joint accounts. I am walking into your building right now." Nicole and I got out of the car and headed for the entrance. Through the glass doors, I could see the reception area. And then I saw Brandon's car pull into the parking lot. "He's here," I said to Nicole. "Good," she replied, her voice fierce. "Let him see you. Let him know it's over." We walked through the doors just as Brandon and Patricia were getting out of their car. I turned and looked directly at him through the glass. Our eyes met. His face went from confident to confused to absolutely white in the span of 3 seconds. I watched the realization hit him. I was standing. I was walking normally. I was talking on my phone. I could hear. He broke into a run toward the building. Patricia grabbed his arm, her face panicked. I turned away from them and walked up to the receptionist. "Amelia Wright to see Mr. Patterson," I said clearly. "I believe my husband is right behind me." The glass doors burst open behind me. Brandon's voice, loud and desperate, cut through the quiet office. "Amelia, you can hear." I turned slowly to face him. Patricia stood behind him, her hand still on his arm, her face pale and frightened. "Yes, Brandon," I said, and I watched him flinch at the sound of my voice. "I can hear. I regained my hearing 2 days ago, and I've heard everything." "Everything? What do you mean, everything?" But his eyes told me he knew exactly what I meant. A door opened behind the reception desk. A tall man in his 50s wearing an expensive suit stepped out. "Mrs. Wright? I'm James Patterson. Perhaps we should all step into my conference room." "I don't think that's necessary," I said, not taking my eyes off Brandon. "I just need to make one thing very clear. I am not incapacitated. I am fully competent. And I have never authorized any power of attorney or guardianship papers." "Amelia, please let me explain," Brandon started. "Explain what?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. "Explain how you told your mother that my deafness might solve your problems? Explain how you planned to steal my inheritance to invest in a property deal? Explain how you forged legal documents?" Patricia made a small sound. Brandon's face had gone from white to red. "Mr. Patterson," I continued, pulling out my phone, "I have photographs of documents my husband has hidden in his office. Documents with my forged signature. Bank statements showing unauthorized transfers of $85,000 from our joint account. And emails between you discussing my alleged incompetence." Patterson's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "I think we all need to sit down and discuss this calmly." "No," I said. "I don't need to sit down. I need you to know that if any papers involving my name are filed with any court, I will immediately report you to the State Bar for participating in fraud." "Mrs. Wright, I assure you, I had no knowledge of any fraud. Your husband came to me with what appeared to be legitimate concerns about his deaf wife who couldn't manage her own affairs." I cut him off. "Did you even try to contact me? Did you ask to meet with me yourself? Or did you just take his word for it because it was easier?" Patterson's silence was answer enough. Brandon finally found his voice. "Amelia, you don't understand. I was trying to help us. The Riverside deal is legitimate. Gerald confirmed we could triple our investment in 6 months. I was going to put all the money back plus profit. You would never have even known it was gone. But I'm deaf, so what does it matter, right?" The words came out bitter. "I can't hear, so I can't manage money. I can't make decisions. I'm just helpless and vulnerable and you can do whatever you want. That's not what I meant. I heard you, Brandon." My voice rose, months of fear and betrayal pouring out. "I stood outside our bedroom door yesterday morning and I heard you tell your mother that my deafness was an opportunity. I heard you discuss forging my signature. I heard you plan to steal from me." Patricia stepped forward, her voice shaking. "Amelia, you have to understand, Brandon was under so much pressure with this investment opportunity, and he just made some poor choices." "You helped him," I said, turning to her. "You knew everything. You encouraged him. Don't pretend you're innocent in this." "I think," Nicole spoke up from beside me, her voice cold, "that Mrs. Wright needs to contact the police. This isn't just poor choices. This is criminal fraud." Brandon's eyes went wide. "The police? Amelia, no, please. I'm your husband. We can work this out. We don't need to involve—" "You're right," I said quietly. "You are my husband. You were supposed to be my partner. For 5 weeks, I was terrified and alone in silence. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't do my job. I felt helpless and vulnerable and scared. And instead of being there for me, instead of supporting me, you saw it as a chance to steal from me. I wasn't stealing, I was borrowing with forged documents and lies." My voice broke slightly. "You were getting legal control over me, Brandon. Over my medical decisions. Over my finances. You were making me incompetent in the eyes of the law so you could do whatever you wanted with my parents' money." He had no answer for that. Patterson cleared his throat. "Mr. Wright, I think you should leave. Mrs. Wright, I'm cancelling this appointment and I will not be filing any paperwork on your behalf. If you want to pursue legal action against your husband, that's your right." "She's not going to do that," Brandon said desperately. "Amelia, please. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But I love you. Don't throw away 6 years of marriage over this. I looked at him. Really looked at him. This man I'd married, who I'd trusted completely, who I'd thought would be there for me in sickness and in health. You threw it away, I said softly. The moment you decided my disability was an opportunity instead of a tragedy, the moment you chose money over me. I turned to Patterson. I want the names of divorce attorneys. Good ones. Amelia, no. And yes, I continued, ignoring Brandon's plea, I will be filing a police report for fraud, for forgery, and for financial exploitation. Brandon's face crumbled. Please, please don't do this. I'll do anything. I'll put all the money back today. I'll cancel the investment. You'll face the consequences of your choices, I said, just like I had to face 5 weeks of deafness. Just like I had to face the truth about who you really are. Nicole put her hand on my shoulder. Let's go. As we walked toward the door, Patricia called out, Amelia, please, he's my son. Don't destroy his life over this. I stopped and turned back one last time. He tried to destroy mine, I said, and he would have succeeded if I hadn't regained my hearing at exactly the right moment to hear the truth. We left them standing there in that office. Brandon, Patricia, and Patterson, all facing the consequences of what they'd done. Nicole drove me straight to the police station.